Do you have some unwanted junk or maybe valuables, but you don't have the time that it takes to go to an appraiser?
Yeah,
I bet you do.
Maybe something like this.
Yeah, well,
so
you can have a house call.
That's right. And here to tell us how to prepare is Christian Lund. He's the owner of Fancy That Antiques in Wilbraham. Hey, Christian.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Great. I love when you come because you bring such unique, interesting things with you.
You know, I try. This is what I do for a living.
And you bought the majority of the things that we have on the table here today at a house call a couple days ago.
Yeah, actually yesterday I went on a house call. A couple called me because they had so many things. They had their whole living room. Somebody passed away and they didn't want to drag it all the way down to the shop. So they said, can you come over? I said, sure, absolutely. So basically what we do is, this is about what to expect when a picker comes to your house to do a pick. So
how do you prepare? That's what I'm wondering. So let's say, you know, grandma, you have all of grandma's stuff, or grandma is moving from her house. You invite someone over. What do you do to get ready?
Yeah, and this can be really overwhelming. Say somebody passed away and you're going through all this, bereavement, and you just don't know what to do. What I suggest is, lay everything out. When somebody comes in like me, like these people were smart, they laid it all out in the living room. They had some very nice things. So I made piles. I said, yeah, I like all this silver, which I bought, and other things too, artwork. Remove all the clutter. That's key. And don't be afraid to let somebody like me or whoever it is go into the attic or the basement, because usually, believe it or not, that's where you find the nice things that will earn you some nice money.
Well, it's always the stuff that the homeowner doesn't expect is going to be good ends up being the thing that you really want.
Usually they'll put out something that is nice, but the market isn't strong for it. But I'll find something laying on the floor. I'll go, hey, how much for this thing or whatever, and this can be the big sleeper. We call it the big score.
Yeah, and who's to know? So I want to know some of the things that you purchased and why you purchased them, and why if people have them in their home, they might maybe think of getting rid of them.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, a lot of this was it was in a garbage can. This was in a garbage can. Ooh. I picked it out. There were silver-plated pieces. None of them are here, but these are solid sterling pieces.
Wow.
So I picked these out. They didn't know. The older gentleman that passed away was a smelter, so he was in the business of melting silver and gold down. So I went in and, like for example, this is a, Ashley, you're holding, what do you think that is?
Oh, putting me on the spot. It's a bowl.
It's a saucer, yeah, for a very fancy pet to drink out of.
Yeah, it's actually a water porringer. It's probably, you could use it for your pets, but it would go into like a big bowl of water, and you could just scoop it out and wash your face or your dog.
There we go.
It is so fancy.
And that has value these days, even though it's something that people don't often use.
Yeah,
what's
old is cool, because they only made a finite amount of these, or whatever it is you're looking at. They don't really bang these out anymore, so there's only a finite amount of these. So yeah, there's great value.
Now, Christian, another tip that you have, because I know in front here there's a cluster of jewelry, but that's not really the best way to present it.
Well, I go in, I separate the good from the bad, from the ugly, and pay accordingly. So what I recommend is just bring the whole jewelry box out, lay it on a table like this. It's really easy for somebody like me or somebody else to go through and pick the good things out and get rid of the rest.
I think it's hard for people too, because there's a lot of emotion attached. So a lot of people maybe don't want to get rid of anything at first because they want to hang on to those memories. But you can look at things and tell people how much you want to pay for it, but they don't necessarily have to part with it.
Right, yeah. We do show and tell too. There's a lot of sentimental pieces where they're not ready, they're sitting on the fence. I ask, do you use it? No. I'll give you this amount for it, but you don't have to sell it. A lot of times people say, that's really good money. Who would pay $1,000 for a water pitcher? Are we going to use a water pitcher? So yeah, maybe sometimes they'll sell it, sometimes they'll just keep it. It doesn't hurt to ask.
But it's good to know its value.
Absolutely.
So if you do have it. Now, what are some things you look for? I mean, I noticed when I flip this over, it says sterling on the bottom.
Sterling on the bottom, yep.
If someone is getting ready for someone like you to come to their house, what are some things they can look for to say, oh, that may actually be worth something?
Things that are marked sterling are 92.5% pure silver, so that's a good thing to lay out and at least get a price on. If you don't know, or if you don't see that mark, there are pieces where I'll bring acid to the house. Not drugs, acid, to test the silver and it'll give us a positive test or not, because a lot of silver is not marked, and there's a big difference. Say if this was silver plated, it'd be a $10 piece, so there's versus $1,000. So there's a big difference, and
Yeah.
it's really important
That's a
to
big
get
difference.
it checked out.
For sure.
Well, good. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think a lot of people out there have these situations where they have so much stuff, but they don't know what to do with it. So a little bit later on in the show, we're going to tell people, you know, if the things don't get sold to someone like you, all the things that they can do for them, and maybe a couple extra tips on how to know what your things are worth.
Absolutely. There's great avenues to get rid of this stuff, you know, me versus something else, a different way.
Yeah.
Just to get rid of and move the things along, because you can't take it with you.
That's true.
Thank you
Can't
so
take
much,
it all with you.
Christian.
Welcome back to Mass Appeal. We're back with Christian Lund. He's the owner of Fancy That Antiques in Wilbraham. Earlier, we were talking about the house call.
Yes.
But let's talk about what happens when someone goes to the house call, they take a couple things, and then you're left with most of your stuff.
Okay. Generally, the steps that you'd take is generally what people do, the smart people. They'll call in somebody that buys antiques or nice things. They'll call them in and sell them some things. But then after that, there's a lot left over.
Yeah.
Right.
So usually after a picker, an antique dealer comes through, what I suggest is going to send things off to auction, because there's a lot of things that a lot of pickers that won't buy, because we all have different clientele bases. So there's going to be a lot of stuff left over. Call an auctioneer. They'll pick what they can move. After that, you can do the, I suggest the donations and take like a tax write-off to
not
like
a
the
bad
Goodwill
idea.
or to your local church.
And what about selling scrap metal?
Scrap metal? Well, yeah, for example, after I bought all this silver yesterday, there's a lot of silver plate left over. There are a lot of pieces that were brass with silver plating over them that were just too far gone or dinged up that really nobody will buy. So I suggested to throw it in the trash can, take all that brass and copper under there to a scrap yard, like the guys that buy cars.
Yeah.
The ladies that buy cars and scrap them, they'll buy that metal too.
You get a couple bucks for it, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit. It seems like it's kind of a process. It's, you know, first an antique picker, and then bring an auctioneer, and then an estate sale, maybe trying to just sell the things that maybe
Yeah.
aren't worth a lot but are still, you know, worth something to someone. So the first step though is to get the valuables into someone like you's hands.
Yeah, because obviously you can't keep everything. So
No.
there are going to be some nice things, whether they're cars or jewelry or artwork or rugs, that you're going to have to pass along. And you want a fair handshake. So go to somebody that's either got a storefront or just a good name through word of mouth, and invite them in. Just see what they have to say. If you're uncomfortable, get a couple people to come in, get a couple prices, and then go on down the line. It's kind of like this. It's like a big machine. It's
And
like a big
eventually
machine.
you'll have a
Eventually,
clean
it's
home.
all gone. Eventually is the key word
Well,
there.
thank you, Christian.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Christian.
much for
Thanks,
being
guys.
here.
Thanks
as
a lot.
always.
And